Most motorhomes try to look expensive. This one just happens to come from a truck company whose rigs are built to survive 1,000,000 miles before anyone thinks about retiring. Comfort was never the plan. Somewhere along the way, someone at Kenworth put a house on top of one anyway. This isn't sitting on a dealer lot, and it isn't built for everyone. There's one detail tucked behind the driver's seat that stopped our edit cold, and we're holding it until the end. Call it obsession. Stay with us. If builds like this are the reason you're here, you already know what to tap before we keep going. Start at the front end. The grille sits behind a slab of chrome that runs nearly the full width of the cab, framed by LED running lights that wrap the corners instead of sitting flush. The body runs 45 feet nose to tail on a coach chassis, which is why the roofline clears 12.5 feet once the satellite dome pops up. 3 slide-out rooms punch out from the main cabin, one for the living space, one for the primary bedroom, one built out as an office/bunk section. The paint is a 2-stage matte overgloss black treatment, chrome kept to the trim only. The wheels are 22.5-inch steel wrapped in load range H rubber, with polished aluminum hub covers doing the only real shine below the belt line. A single curbside entry door drops a 3-step powered staircase, lit from underneath by a strip of amber LED that only comes on once the parking brake is set. Underneath, a full-length aluminum skid plate runs from the front axle back past the fuel tanks. And 11 exterior storage bays line both sides enough that most owners reportedly never touch the interior closets for anything but clothes. Here's the honest part. At 45 feet, the rear overhang is long enough that backing into anything less than a full-depth pull-through is going to end in a scraped bumper, no matter how good the camera system is. But the outside was never really the point. What's happening under the floor is the part almost nobody's talking about yet. Under the cab sits a 12.9-liter inline-6 turbo diesel, reportedly tuned for 510 horsepower and 1,850 pound-feet of torque, paired with a 12-speed automated transmission and full air suspension. With load leveling at each corner, the ride height adjusts itself on a slope, which matters more than it sounds like it should when you're leveling a 45-foot house every night. Twin 150-gallon fuel tanks put the range near 1,200 miles between fills, depending on how much weight is sitting in the belly bins. Braking comes from air discs at every axle position, and a 12.5 kilowatt diesel generator handles hookup-free climate control once the batteries need a top off. The transmission is tuned with a dedicated grade descent mode, which matters on the kind of mountain pass rig is apparently meant to be driven on, not just photographed on. Here's the number worth sitting with. Reports point to only 18 units being built in the first production run. 18, not 18,000. And here's the critique nobody in the glossy renders wants to say out loud: a rig this long and this heavy is not sliding into a gas station in one pass. You will 3-point turn. Budget for it. Step inside and the trucking heritage disappears completely. Rift-cut white oak panels run the length of the main cabin, broken up by a full-height wine and beverage column near the galley. The kitchen carries a 4-burner induction cooktop, a residential depth refrigerator, and quartz countertops with a waterfall edge on the island. The primary suite sits at the rear, with a king bed on a slide-out platform, a walk-in closet, and an en-suite bathroom built around a stone soaking tub, a bathtub, in a vehicle also rated to haul 54,000 pounds. Flooring throughout is wide plank engineered oak, heated in the main living zone and the primary bathroom, and the lighting runs on a dimmable, zoned system with separate scenes for driving, cooking, and sleeping, all controlled from a single panel by the entry door instead of scattered switches. The office/bunk section carries a fold-down desk, a single bunk with a privacy curtain, and its own half bathroom, so nobody's walking past the primary suite at 2 in the morning. Looking at this, it feels less like standing inside a motorhome and more like standing inside a hotel suite that happens to be doing 65 down the interstate. And here's where the list has to stop for a second, because underneath all of that oak and quartz, there's still a truck frame engineered to survive a mine site. And that contradiction is the entire reason this thing exists. Off-grid, the build reportedly carries a 2,600-watt rooftop solar array feeding a 42 kilowatt-hour lithium battery bank, enough to run the induction cooktop and climate system without the generator for roughly 2 days in mild weather. Fresh water sits at 150 gallons, with 100 gallons of gray capacity and 80 of black, enough to sit off-grid for the better part of a week without hunting for a dump station. Connectivity runs through a roof-mounted satellite internet terminal paired with cellular boosting, holding a working signal in stretches of desert that would otherwise go dark for hours. Climate control is split into 3 independently zoned areas: front cab, main living space, and primary suite each holding its own temperature within a couple of degrees, regardless of what the other two are doing. A perimeter camera system with low-light sensors covers all four corners plus the entry stairs, recording locally instead of to the cloud, which matters if you're parked somewhere with no signal to upload to anyway. Here's the detail almost nobody outside the build team seems to know. The frame rails reportedly carry a severe duty structural rating, specified deliberately for the extra weight this cabin adds. That's not a marketing choice. That's a supply chain decision nobody expected. And it's exactly why the number we mentioned earlier, the one about how many of these actually get built, matters more than it first sounds. The number circulating for a fully spec build sits close to $2.8 million for context. That's roughly what a two-bedroom residence inside a Ritz-Carlton Residences tower runs in a warm weather market. That's about the only fair comparison point available, since a build like this doesn't leave much else to measure it against. Delivery timelines being floated right now run past a year from order to keys, which tracks for a build where most of the labor reportedly happens by hand rather than on a line. This isn't built for someone who wants a weekend camper. It's built for someone who already owns the mining company and the ranch, and wants one machine that can disappear into the desert for 2 weeks without asking permission from a hookup. If that's the life you're already living, or the one you're building toward, this is the build worth putting on your radar before the 18 units are gone. Here's the detail we held back. Behind the driver's seat, under a fold-down panel, sits a second satellite mast hand-cranked. No battery, no software. Built for the day the solar array and every screen on this rig fail at once. 1,000 miles from a signal. That's not a comfort feature. That's someone at Kenworth admitting the desert eventually wins and building for that day anyway. That's the verdict, really. Strip away the oak paneling and the soaking tub, and what's left is a piece of equipment that was engineered first and decorated second, a build order that shows in every welded seam under the floor. This isn't a motorhome trying to impress you at a dealership. It's a truck company's answer to a question. Nobody asks them what happens if the getaway vehicle also has to survive the getaway. Of the 18 units reportedly slated for this run, people close to the build say 11 already have names attached to them. Whether that number still holds by the time this posts is anyone's guess, but that's the kind of scarcity most brands fake, and this one apparently didn't have to. Call it obsession if you want the kind that puts a hand-crank backup radio behind a driver's seat nobody asked for. That same obsession is the only reason something like this ever gets built at all. So would you actually take something this size off-grid, or does the idea fall apart the second you picture parking it? Say which camp you're in below. And next time, we're going inside a build its own factory reportedly didn't want photographed. You'll want to be here for that one.